In today's hearing, we delve into the heart-wrenching tale of Luis Lorenzo Vargas, a 46-year-old man from Los Angeles who is finally set to be freed after spending a staggering 16 years behind bars for crimes he did not commit. This is a story that will leave you questioning the flaws in our justice system and the devastating impact it can have on innocent lives. Luis Vargas had been wrongfully sentenced to life in prison in the past. This was because he had been charged with 3 counts of sexual abuse. But before we get to his deserved pardon from prison, let's have a little backstory. In the bustling city of Los Angeles, a nightmare unfolded for one man, Luis Lorenzo Vargas. At the age of 46, Vargas found himself at the center of a harrowing ordeal that would strip him of his freedom for 16 long years. Accused of 3 sexual assaults, Vargas vehemently maintained his innocence from the very beginning. It was the year 1999 when Vargas stood before a judge, facing a life sentence for crimes he adamantly denied committing. With unwavering conviction, he warned the court that the true perpetrator, the one who had terrorized innocent victims, was still out there, continuing to prey on others. "You can sentence me to all the years you want," he warned a judge in 1999, "but as far as I'm concerned, that individual that really did these crimes might really be raping someone out there." 16 years later, his words now haunt LA's criminal justice system. Despite his protests, Vargas was convicted based on eyewitness identifications and circumstantial evidence. The victims, traumatized by their experiences, positively identified him as the man responsible for their suffering. Adding weight to the case against him was Vargas's teardrop tattoo, a mark that matched the description given by the victims. The prosecution argued that the similarities among the 3 crimes were so striking that they could only have been committed by the same person. Vargas, with his teardrop tattoo and resemblance to a composite sketch, became the prime suspect in the eyes of law enforcement. The jury, convinced by the prosecution's case, found Vargas guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 55 years to life in prison, a punishment that would keep him locked away from his loved ones for the rest of his days. As Vargas began his life behind bars, he never wavered in his claims of innocence. He fought tirelessly, filing appeal after appeal, hoping that one day the truth would prevail and his name would be cleared. 16 years passed, and hope seemed to dim for Luis Lorenzo Vargas, but fate had a different plan in store. In a stunning turn of events, new DNA evidence emerged that would shake the foundations of Vargas's conviction and pave the way for his long-awaited exoneration. Los Angeles County prosecutors, faced with this compelling evidence, wrote a letter to the judge, expressing their loss of confidence in Vargas's convictions. The DNA analysis not only excluded Vargas as the perpetrator, but also pointed to the involvement of a notorious criminal known as the Teardrop Rapist. The Teardrop Rapist, an unidentified assailant linked to over 3 dozen sexual assaults spanning nearly 2 decades, had haunted the streets of Los Angeles. The attacks followed a chilling pattern, with the assailant threatening victims with a knife or gun before assaulting them in secluded areas. Many of the Teardrop Rapist's victims were attacked within a 3-mile radius of the crimes Vargas was convicted of. The similarities between the 2 sets of crimes were striking, leading to questions about the accuracy of Vargas's identification as the perpetrator. The revelation of the DNA evidence cast doubt on Vargas's guilt and raised concerns about the reliability of eyewitness identification. During earlier lineups, the victims had not been as certain in their identifications as they were during the trial. Furthermore, a discrepancy emerged in the victims' descriptions of the teardrop tattoo, with Vargas having only 1 teardrop instead of the 2 described by some victims. The district attorney's office, after a careful and extensive review, approved Vargas's release. The sophisticated DNA technology used to exclude Vargas's DNA did not exist during his trial, underscoring the importance of advancements in forensic science. In a downtown courtroom, Luis Lorenzo Vargas, now 46 years old, walked in slowly, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. As the judge announced his exoneration, tears streamed down Vargas's face, a poignant moment of redemption after years of wrongful imprisonment. Vargas's mother, Blanca Alatorre, expressed her lingering anger outside the courtroom, vowing that this injustice should never happen to anyone else. She also recalled what her son told her before he was about to be locked up.
He told me, "Mom, when you see me, I am outside. Please buy me a big hamburger and we eat it together."
The case of Luis Lorenzo Vargas serves as a stark reminder of the flaws in our criminal justice system and the devastating impact it can have on innocent lives.
He is in fact innocent because the evidence will show that undermines the prosecution's case.
The exoneration of Luis Lorenzo Vargas marked the beginning of a new chapter, not only for him, but also for his family. The weight of his wrongful conviction had taken a toll on their lives, leaving scars that would take time to heal. Vargas's 26-year-old daughter, Crystal Nunez Vargas, stood by her father's side throughout the ordeal. Inside the courtroom, a weight lifted from her shoulders as the judge announced his decision. The years of anguish and heartache began to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. Crystal, who had experienced the absence of a father figure, felt a sense of relief knowing that her father's release would allow them to rebuild their relationship. She had often cried herself to sleep, longing for the protection and security that a father should provide. Now she could finally envision a future where her father would be there for her.
Not having a father figure is difficult. You don't have that sense of protection, that sense of security. And growing up, I would cry myself to sleep.
The impact of Vargas's imprisonment extended beyond Crystal's life. His absence had cast a shadow over important milestones, such as birthdays and even her quinceañera, where she yearned for a father-daughter dance that could never happen. Crystal had recently gotten married, but the celebration was put on hold until after her father's release, as she wanted him to walk her down the aisle. Vargas's greatest wish, once he regained his freedom, was to read bedtime stories to his 7-year-old granddaughter. The simple joys of being a grandfather had been denied to him for far too long, but now he could look forward to creating cherished memories with the newest generation of his family. As Vargas and his loved ones embarked on the journey of rebuilding their lives, they were not alone. The support of organizations like the California Innocence Project had played a crucial role in uncovering the truth and securing Vargas's exoneration. Their tireless efforts served as a reminder of the power of perseverance and the potential for justice to prevail. The case of Luis Lorenzo Vargas serves as a stark reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of fighting for truth and justice. It is a story that will continue to inspire and shed light on the flaws within our criminal justice system. In the dark underbelly of the criminal justice system, where truth and justice are often overshadowed by corruption and prejudice, one man's life was forever changed. This is the shocking story of John Bun, a young man who found himself wrongfully convicted of a murder he committed in 1991. For over 16 long and agonizing years, John languished behind bars, his dreams and aspirations shattered as he fought to prove his innocence. Join us as we delve into the harrowing details of John Bun's wrongful conviction, the twists and turns of his legal battle, and the ultimate triumph of justice that finally set him free in 2018. This sentence was a result of the second-degree murder he was charged with. It was a fateful day in the summer of 1991 when the life of John Bun took a dramatic turn. Just a teenager at the time, John found himself at the center of a murder investigation that would forever alter the course of his life. The day before 14-year-old Bun was arrested, two off-duty Rikers Island correction officers and old friends, Rolando Neischer and Robert Crossan, were sitting in a car, chatting outside the Kingsborough Projects, a housing project in Crown Heights. Suddenly, two men on bicycles approached the car, pointed guns, and ordered the pair out of their vehicle. Crossan later described at trial how a gun then went off, the bullet ripping through his hand. He managed to get out of the car and sprinted away, losing track of his friend. At some point, Neischer had grabbed his own firearm and fought back. In the ensuing gunfight, before the attackers jumped in the car and drove away, Neischer was shot 5 times. He was found slumped against a fence, bleeding, but still alive, 192 feet from where the car had been parked. The next day, they came for John Bun, with Crossan identifying both him and his friend Rosian Hargrave in police lineups. 3 days after that, Neischer died from his wounds. The victim, an off-duty correction officer, was brutally gunned down in broad daylight. The crime scene was chaotic, with witnesses pointing fingers and confusion clouding the air. In the midst of the chaos, John, with no prior criminal record, was arrested and charged with the heinous crime. On August 17th, Bun was formally charged with robbery and murder. He was sent to the notorious Spofford Juvenile Detention Center in the Bronx, where he waited for 16 months. The media sensationalized the case, portraying John as a dangerous criminal who deserved nothing but the harshest punishment. But behind the scenes, the truth was far from what the prosecution wanted the world to believe. John's defense team tirelessly worked to uncover the flaws in the case against him. They discovered that the witnesses were coerced and manipulated, their testimonies tainted by the pressure to secure a conviction. Despite the mounting mounting evidence in John's favor, the trial seemed to be a battle against insurmountable odds. The jury, swayed by the media frenzy and the prosecution's narrative, found John guilty. The judge, bound by the law, sentenced him to a life behind bars. Bun and Hargrave's trial took place in November of 1992 on Thanksgiving Eve. 4 people took the stand. The first police officer to arrive at the scene, the medical examiner, a 77th precinct detective, and Crossan, the sole primary witness who had picked both boys out of lineups. The trial lasted just 1 day. Bun and Hargrave were both found guilty, and so, at the tender age of 14, John Bun was condemned to spend his youth and adulthood in a prison cell for a crime he did not commit. The injustice was palpable, the weight of the wrongful conviction crushing. Locked away in a prison cell, John Bun refused to let despair consume him. Determined to prove his innocence, he embarked on a relentless quest for justice. With limited resources and against all odds, John began to uncover crucial evidence that would eventually turn the tide in his favor. In 2006, Bun saved a prison counselor from being violently assaulted and raped by another inmate. His heroic actions were a factor in the parole board's decision to release him that year. But out on parole, Bun struggled. With his criminal record as a convicted murderer, he couldn't get a job. He was diagnosed with PTSD and was granted Social Security and disability. But Bun was about to get some long-awaited good news. In 2010, the Exoneration Initiative, a non-profit organization that provides free legal assistance to the wrongfully convicted in New York, began looking into Bun's and Hargrave's convictions. In May of 2018, after 27 years of wrongful conviction, the district attorney's office announced they would not retry Rosen Hargrave or John Bun. They became the 12th and 13th men to be exonerated of convictions related to investigations by Detective Luis Vargas. After Judge Simpson announced he was a free man, Bun addressed the courtroom.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because for 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
But the scars of his wrongful conviction ran deep. John had spent his formative years behind bars, robbed of his freedom, education, and countless opportunities. The world had moved on while he remained trapped in a time capsule of injustice.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
As John stepped out of prison, he faced the daunting task of rebuilding his life from scratch. The challenges were immense. He had to navigate a society that had changed drastically during his incarceration, find employment, and reconnect with loved ones who had been separated from him for far too long. Yet, John's spirit remained unbroken. He channeled his experiences into advocacy work, becoming a vocal advocate for criminal justice reform and the rights of the wrongfully convicted. His story resonated with people around the world, shedding light on the flaws and biases that plague our justice system. In the aftermath of his release, John dedicated himself to helping others who had suffered a similar fate. He became a beacon of hope, offering support and guidance to those still fighting for their freedom. His resilience and determination inspired countless others to never give up, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. In today's hearing, we will delve into the case of Rick Jackson, a man who, along with his friends, was wrongfully convicted of the murder of businessman Harold Franks. This shocking tale of injustice will take us back to the 1970s in Cleveland, Ohio, where 3 innocent African-American men were sentenced to life imprisonment for a crime they did not commit. This sentence was a result of the murder charges. It was a fateful day in Cleveland, Ohio, on May 19, 1975, when the peaceful streets of the city's east side were forever marred by a heinous crime. Businessman Harold Franks, a hard-working individual known for his dedication and kindness, met a tragic end outside a small grocery store where he delivered money orders. What followed would be a shocking tale of injustice that would haunt the lives of 3 innocent men for decades to come. According to witnesses, the scene was one of unimaginable horror. 2 black men, their identities unknown at the time, viciously attacked Franks. They beat him mercilessly and callously, threw acid in his face, causing excruciating pain. But the brutality didn't end there. One of the assailants, fueled by a heart filled with darkness, fired 2 shots from a .38 caliber weapon, ending Franks' life in an instant. As chaos ensued, a round from the shooter's gun struck Anna Robinson, the wife of the store's owner, leaving her injured and traumatized. The assailants, driven by their sinister motives, snatched Franks' briefcase and fled the scene in a green car, leaving behind a community in shock and mourning. The authorities, determined to bring the perpetrators to justice, launched an investigation that would forever change the lives lives of 3 innocent individuals. Their focus turned to Ricky Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman, 3 African-American men who happened to live in the neighborhood. The case against them was built primarily on the testimony of a young boy named Eddie Vernon, who claimed to have witnessed the crime unfold before his eyes. Just 12 years old at the time, Vernon's account became the linchpin of the prosecution's case. But little did anyone know the devastating consequences that would follow. The Bridgman brothers, known as good boys in their community, lived with their mother, Bessie Mae Bridgman, and their siblings. Ronnie had attended trade school and was working at a job, while Wiley had served in the Marines before receiving an honorable discharge. Ricky Jackson, a friend of Ronnie's, had no criminal record and was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Based on Eddie Vernon's testimony, the authorities arrested Ricky Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman, charging them with the murder of Harold Franks. The lack of physical evidence or other witnesses did not deter the prosecution, who were convinced of their guilt. The trial was a harrowing experience for the accused and their loved ones. Despite maintaining their innocence, the jury found them guilty, and they were sentenced to life imprisonment. The weight of an unjust verdict would hang heavy on their shoulders for years to come. It was a grave miscarriage of justice. The evidence against them was flimsy at best, and yet they were condemned to a lifetime behind bars. It's a stark reminder of the flaws within our legal system and the devastating impact it can have on innocent lives. And so began the long and arduous journey of Rick Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman as they fought to prove their innocence and reclaim their lives. Life behind bars is a world filled with despair, uncertainty, and the constant struggle for survival. For Rick Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman, their wrongful conviction plunged them into a nightmarish existence that would span decades. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into years, Rick, Ronnie, and Wiley found themselves navigating the treacherous waters of the prison system. Separated from their families and stripped of their freedom, they clung to hope, determined to prove their innocence. Life in prison was a constant battle for survival. They faced violence, isolation, and the harsh realities of confinement. But amidst the darkness, they formed bonds with fellow inmates, finding solace in the camaraderie that can only be forged in the crucible of injustice. We were all in the same boat, fighting against a system that had failed us. Rick, Ronnie, and Wiley were strong, resilient men. They never lost hope, and their determination inspired us all. Over the years, the 3 men dedicated themselves to their legal battles, seeking justice through the Ohio Innocence Project. Their case gained momentum when investigative journalist Kyle Swenson shed light on the flaws in their conviction, raising questions about the credibility of the key witness, Eddie Vernon. In 2011, Vernon's testimony began to crumble as he recanted his statement, admitting that he had been coerced by the police into testifying against Rick, Ronnie, and Wiley. His confession breathed new life into their fight for freedom, igniting a glimmer of hope in the darkness of their wrongful imprisonment. Eddie Vernon's recantation was a turning point in the case. It exposed the flaws in the prosecution's evidence and raised serious doubts about the credibility of the entire trial. It was a breakthrough moment that paved the way for their eventual exoneration. As the legal battle intensified, the Ohio Innocence Project tirelessly worked to uncover the truth. In November 2014, during a court hearing, Eddie Vernon described the threats he had faced from detectives and the immense burden of guilt he had carried for years. His testimony further dismantled the prosecution's case against Rick, Ronnie, and Wiley. On November 20th, 2014, Cuyahoga County, prosecutors filed a motion to dismiss the charges against Rick Jackson and Wiley Bridgman. The following day, they were released at separate court hearings, finally tasting the sweet air of freedom after decades of wrongful imprisonment.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. They suggest to you that life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one.
It was a moment of pure joy and relief. We had waited for this day for so long, and finally justice was served. But our hearts still ached for Ronnie, who remained behind bars. Their release marked the end of a chapter filled with pain and injustice, but it also marked the beginning of a new journey, one that would lead them to seek compensation for the years stolen from their lives.
It's extraordinary. I'm very happy. Needless to say, words can't express how I feel right now. I'm just glad to be out, glad to be a free man.
The exoneration of Rick Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman marked the end of their wrongful imprisonment, but it was only the beginning of a new battle for justice and compensation.
How excited are you to see Ronnie and Wiley?
Well, I really haven't got a chance to meet them yet, see them yet. I saw them briefly in the courtroom, but I'm dying to meet them. I want to embrace them and hug them. Excuse me. Because we've been through a lot together. and we made it. You know, we're here. We made it.
With their newfound freedom, Rick, Ronnie, and Wiley wasted no time in their pursuit of justice. The Ohio Innocence Project, alongside their legal team, continued to fight for their rights and sought compensation for the years they had lost. The fight for justice didn't end with their release. It was crucial to hold those responsible accountable and ensure that they received the compensation they deserved for the grave injustice they had endured. In 2015, Rick Jackson was awarded $1 million in compensation by the state of Ohio for his decades of wrongful imprisonment. This was just the beginning of the financial redress they would receive. In 2016, Rick Jackson received an additional $2.65 million settlement from the State Court of Claims based on estimates of lost income. This substantial sum aimed to provide some measure of reparation for the years he had spent behind bars. The compensation was bittersweet. It couldn't undo the pain and suffering they had endured, but it was a step towards acknowledging the grave injustice they had faced. The Bridgman brothers also received compensation for their wrongful imprisonment. In April 2015, they were awarded a combined $1.6 million, with Wiley Bridgman receiving $969,093 for his 37 years in prison, and Kwame Ajamu receiving $647,578 for his 28 years of wrongful incarceration. The city of Cleveland also played a role in righting the wrongs. In May 2020, they agreed to pay a joint $18 million settlement to Rick Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman, effectively putting an end to their pending lawsuits. The city's decision to settle was a significant step towards acknowledging the systemic failures that led to their wrongful conviction. It was a crucial moment for accountability and a commitment to preventing such injustices in the future. The fight for justice and compensation was not just about financial redress. It was about holding the system accountable and ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate. Their case shed light on the flaws within our justice system and sparked important conversations about the need for reform. Their fight for justice has become a symbol of resilience and a catalyst for change. Today, Rick Jackson, Ronnie Bridgman, and Wiley Bridgman continue to advocate for criminal justice reform and work to prevent wrongful convictions. Their story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of fighting for truth and justice. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome courtroom videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.